Hello, I'm Bliznub, and welcome to Building the Best. Today we're going to be looking at the Tonkor, because why the hell not? This thing is gorgeous. Now, I have done the Tonkor before, but since then a lot of new mods have come out, and I thought this weapon deserved a second look. And here it is. Yep, it's not much different from the original build, actually, but it has been optimized quite a lot. Now, to start off with, obviously it's fair to say that the Tonkor is not just an AoE, but a crit AoE weapon, and so we're building for both of those things. We start off obviously with Firestorm, because increased radius means more enemies in the blast, means effectively more damage output. Now, we have Serration, Heavy Cal, and Split Chamber on here, and some people will disagree with putting Heavy Cal on this weapon, as it makes its accuracy quite poor. But personally, I find Heavy Cal isn't that much of a downside for this weapon. In corridors and closed spaces, the grenades are going to bounce around a lot anyway and slaughter absolutely anything they touch. Being pinpoint accurate isn't entirely necessary. Besides, I like to run up to enemies and shoot them at point blank with this weapon. And so I'm taking Heavy Cal simply because it adds a ridiculous amount of damage and has, in my mind, a small downside. Now, next we have Point Strike to give us 87.5% crit chance, Vital Sense to buff our crit multiplier up to 5.5 times, and then we have Bladed Rounds to buff our crit multiplier up to 8.5 times, which is absolutely insane. Now bear in mind, Bladed Rounds only works after a kill and whilst aiming for 9 seconds, but sorry, you don't have to aim for 9 seconds, it's 9 seconds after a kill, but anyhow. Basically, Bladed Rounds is a second Vital Sense, and it works incredibly well, and the 8.5 times crit multiplier is just insanely good, and it really makes this weapon ridiculously powerful. And I have Infected Clip on here as the last mod. As always, take whichever element you prefer. And just very quickly, I'm going to say that if you do want to take a combined element, I would recommend dropping a Firestorm and having, for instance, I don't know, gas or corrosive damage on that spot. But definitely an honourable mention needs to be made to one particular mod, which I am foregoing from this build because I don't think it's terribly useful, and that is of course Argon Scope. Now, I've run the numbers with Argon Scope. Now, assuming that you can get a headshot whenever the hell you want it, and the Argon Scope would always be active if it were on your weapon, you actually have a slight decrease in damage if you were to replace Infected Clip with Argon Scope. Whether or not Bladed Rounds is active, Argon Scope replacing Infected Clip is going to lower the damage on the weapon quite substantially. Now, of course, I know the kind of person who runs Argon Scope will be replacing Firestorm with it, and that is very, very valid, but the actual damage increase isn't that substantial. You're going from 52,400 average damage, and I'll explain how I've calculated that in a second, to 69,000 average damage. And whilst a climb of 16,000 damage, 17,000 damage does seem like a lot, honestly, on this scale, it's not. And you only have a 34% chance of getting the higher numbers and the weapon fulfilling its potential. And honestly, I'd rather have the slightly lower crit damage and the slightly better AoE effect or base damage, depending on what you're replacing it with. And just to put to bed the idea of replacing Bladed Rounds with Argon Scope. Just no. Anyhow, let's move on. Oh, actually, there is one last thing. Critical Delay. Complete waste of a mod slot, don't even bother. So let's go try this thing out. Now, I'm running Toxin up, but as always, it is a personal preference what element you run. Toxin and Hellfire, Infected Clip and Hellfire for heat damage work very, very well on the Tonkor, as Blast Heat and Blast Toxin are incredibly good against practically all enemy types, actually. So for this demonstration, I'm actually going to be running corrosive damage by taking Stormbringer instead of Firestorm, simply because I want the slight increase in damage and I want the corrosive damage type, as I'm going up against some good, delightful Grineer. Now, I'm not likely to get procs at all, but I find that, honestly, the Tonkor suffers against both Bombards and Heavy Gunners. It suffers slightly more against Heavy Gunners. And you can see now that we've got a Blade of Brown's proc, I'm going to go up against them. And hopefully... There we go. Those are some delightful numbers. Now, please bear in mind that after I do get that Blade of Brown's proc, I am scoping in, you know, aiming down the sights for every shot. And it's not about when you fire. It's not whether you're aiming when you fire. It's whether you're aiming when the grenade hits the target. But it's always a good idea with the Tonkor to get in close and just pump grenades into them. Especially if you have bladed rounds on, you really want to be aiming down the sights and getting the absolute maximum damage you can out. Now, of course, Eviscerators are running alloy armor, so my damage is going to fall off a little bit against them. The same can be said of the Bombards. But against everything else, honestly, this weapon is going to do fantastically. You know, I will happily admit, against level 140 Bombards, this weapon might fall off a tiny bit. Maybe. Potentially. But against pretty much anything else, it's going to one-shot them. This weapon is absolute ridiculousness. It really is. And honestly, if you wanted to take on Bombards, just throw on radiation damage, and you will slaughter them. You really will. The Tonkor does not care for your puny health bar, and will massacre anything it comes up against. Now, there is one last thing to say about the Tonkor. I appreciate I probably should have taken this weapon up against things I can actually one-shot. Although I think I'll be fine against that guy. And that is that you can grenade jump with it by shooting your own feet, which is both effective at clearing out enemies around your feet and at throwing you high into the air. Almost as high as a bullet jump, actually, but... oh, right, I'm on a slope. Hold up. Oh, wait, okay. Nowhere near as high as a bullet jump, but still. Absolutely hilarious to do in a pinch. If you do get surrounded by infested or something, and you can just fire a tonk at your feet and instantly remove yourself from the situation, it is so fun. And, you know what? I'm going to show you, because I realize I'm ranting and raving about how amazing the Tonkor is, and honestly, the only way to know how good the Tonkor truly is to experience it firsthand. So you get some infested, you point it at your feet, you fire, and you watch them disintegrate. They're just turned into smoke. And that is the beauty of the Tonkor. It does not care about your puny health bar. And anyhow, that's pretty much all I have to say about this weapon. There are only so many times I can tell you that this weapon is overpowered as all hell. And just to finish off, to reiterate, this weapon pumps out 52,400 damage on average. And that average is calculated by multiplying the damage by the crit multiplier and then multiplying that by the chance to hit. And then multiplying the damage by the chance not to crit, and adding the two numbers. It's basically a quick and easy way of calculating damage on weapons that can red crit. But simply put, 52,400 average damage per shot. And a little bit more if you crit with both shots. So, this weapon is insane. And that's all I have to say about it. Anyhow, thank you for watching. As always, please like and comment below, and subscribe if you want to see more. I'm Bliznub, and this is the Tonkor. But wait, there's more. For those of you who do stay to the end of my videos, you delightful subscribers, I have to thank you guys so very much, because I have recently hit 10k subs, and oh my word, so amazing. I cannot believe that many people want to hear me rant and rave about Warframe. So thank you so much for subscribing, and I hope I keep putting out the content that you enjoy for a long time. Thank you for watching.